She came in every morning, quiet, polite, invisible to most. A woman who never raised her voice, never caused a scene. But one bitter cup of coffee would change everything. The man behind the counter wore a badge and a smirk, believing his uniform made him untouchable. He thought she was just another face he could humiliate and forget. What he didn't know was who she'd raised, someone who'd make the whole world remember. Because sometimes, silence hides the loudest power of all. Maya was the kind of woman people often overlooked. She worked double shifts at the diner, raised her son alone, and still managed a soft smile for every customer who bothered to notice her. Her mornings began before sunrise, coffee brewing, old gospel music humming through the tiny kitchen, a framed photo of her son in uniform watching from the counter. He'd made her proud everything she'd worked for. To most, she was just another quiet face behind a counter. But to those who knew her, Maya carried a strength that came from years of holding her head high in a world that often tried to lower it. She'd learned to let small insults slide, to swallow pain and replace it with patience. That was her armor. The local officers came in often laughing loud, treating the diner like their own. Maya served them the way she served everyone, steady, polite, unseen. But lately, one officer had started pushing snide comments, sharp looks, a cruel smile that lingered too long. She brushed it off. She'd seen worse. That morning, though, something in the air felt different. The diner was too quiet, the laughter too forced. And when the door opened and he walked in, badge glinting under the neon light, Maya's hands trembled ever so slightly over the coffee pot. She didn't know it yet, but this was the moment her silence would be tested. The morning rush came in, waves, construction workers, teachers, tired nurses, all chasing caffeine before their day began. Maya moved through it with quiet grace, her hands steady even when her heart wasn't. She had seen the officer come in before, always with the same swagger, the same smirk that made her skin crawl. His name was Officer Dalton, though she rarely said it aloud. To her, he was just another man who thought his badge gave him power over people like her. He ordered the same thing every time: black coffee, no sugar. But that morning, his voice carried an edge sharper than usual. The diner had gone still the moment he entered, as if the walls themselves sensed trouble. "Hey, sunshine," he said, leaning across the counter, his tone dripping with mock sweetness. "Don't burn my coffee this time. You people have a habit of ruining things." The words stung, but Maya didn't flinch. She had learned long ago that reacting only fed the cruelty. So, she poured his coffee carefully, hands trembling only slightly, her gaze fixed on the cup instead of his eyes. But Dalton wasn't satisfied with her silence. He wanted a reaction. He wanted to remind her who had the power. He took the cup from her hand and poured it slowly onto the counter. The steaming liquid splashed across her wrist, staining her uniform, dripping onto the floor. A few customers gasped. Others looked away. No one moved. "Guess it's too hot for you to handle," he sneered. Maya's breath caught. Her wrist burned, but she said nothing. The smell of coffee and humiliation filled the air. Somewhere in the back, the cook froze mid-motion. A woman near the window whispered, "That's not right." But the officer's presence, his gun, his authority held the room in silent fear. Dalton smiled, satisfied, and walked out without paying. The bell over the door jingled cheerfully as if mocking what had just happened. Maya stood there, soaked and shaking, but not from fear. Something inside her had shifted. The quiet endurance that once protected her now felt like a cage. That night, she went home and sat in her small kitchen. The same gospel music hummed low, but it didn't comfort her anymore. She stared at the photo of her son in uniform, Sergeant Jordan Reed, a decorated Army medic stationed overseas. The pride she once felt now mixed with anger. How could a uniform mean honor for one man and hate for another? She cleaned her burn, bandaged it, and whispered to herself, "Enough." The next morning, the diner was busier than usual. Word had spread someone had filmed the incident on their phone. The clip was already making its rounds online. Maya didn't know who recorded it. She didn't need to. All she knew was that for the first time, people were seeing what she'd lived with for years. But as the whispers grew louder and reporters began circling, Officer Dalton wasn't done. He'd seen the video too, and he was furious. And this time, he wasn't coming in for coffee. The diner was packed that afternoon, voices murmuring, cameras ready. The viral video had drawn reporters, activists, and onlookers. Maya didn't want the spotlight. She just wanted peace. But peace was the one thing Officer Dalton couldn't stand to see her have. He burst through the door, red-faced and trembling with fury. The room went silent, forks suspended midair. He pointed at Maya, shouting words that barely made sense, demanding she take it all back, accusing her of ruining his life. His voice cracked with rage, but beneath it was fear, the kind that comes when power starts to slip away. Maya stood still behind the counter, her hands folded in front of her. She didn't yell. She didn't plead. Her calmness seemed to enrage him even more. "You think you can embarrass me?" he barked, slamming his hand on the counter. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "You don't know who you're dealing with." But this time, he wasn't the only one being watched. Phones were raised, recording every word, every twitch of his jaw. The same crowd that once looked away now leaned in closer. Dalton grabbed the coffee pot, the same one he'd used to humiliate her, and lifted it as if to throw it again. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then a voice from the door stopped him cold. "Put it down." It was firm, steady, familiar. The crowd turned. Maya's son, Sergeant Jordan Reed, stood in uniform, freshly home from deployment. His presence filled the diner like a force of gravity. Dalton froze, eyes darting between the soldier's face and the mother he'd mocked. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Maya's eyes glistened, not with fear, but with something stronger: relief. Vindication. For years, she'd been invisible. Now, every eye in the room saw her. Dalton's hand trembled as he lowered the pot, his voice breaking into stutters. "I didn't mean," but it was too late. The cameras were still rolling. The world was still watching. And Maya, quiet, patient. Maya finally had a voice louder than his. The video of that moment spread across the country within hours. News anchors debated, strangers argued online, and hashtags filled the screens of millions. But beneath the noise, something real began to stir. People saw Maya not as a nameless face in another viral clip, but as a mother, a worker, a woman who had endured too much for too long. Officer Dalton was placed on leave within days. Investigations opened, protests formed outside the diner, and voices that had once stayed silent began to rise. Yet, for Maya, justice wasn't about punishment. It was about being seen, about making sure no one else had to swallow their pain just to survive another day. She returned to work weeks later, standing behind the same counter. But this time, something had changed. Customers greeted her with warmth. Strangers thanked her for her courage. Even those who once looked away now met her eyes. And when people asked how she stayed so calm, she simply said, "I didn't fight him with anger. I fought him with truth. And truth doesn't burn out." Her son stood beside her, his uniform a reminder that not all who wear one choose hate. Together, they became a symbol of quiet resistance, of dignity in the face of cruelty, and of the power that comes when silence breaks. Because Maya's story wasn't just hers. It belonged to every person who's ever been dismissed, devalued, or dehumanized because of the color of their skin. Every time a story like hers is told, It forces the world to look a little closer, to listen a little harder. So the question remains, how many more Mayas will it take before we stop needing videos to believe what's been happening all along?